Hello my hero, have a nice viewing dear. If you like the story, please like it and write your opinion in the comments, please please please.
I always knew that money could corrupt people, but I never imagined it would tear my own family apart. What I went through feels like a cheap drama script about betrayal and moral downfall. But this happened in real life, my life. And now, they're both out on the street. I met Amanda 3 years ago. She was 7 years younger than me, beautiful, charismatic, always knowing the right words to make me smile. We got married quickly, and I thought I had found the woman I would spend the rest of my life with. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. My grandfather, Henry Harper, was always a respected figure in our family. He commanded authority, had the admiration of everyone, and most importantly, a fortune. After my grandmother passed away, he became lonely, and I was happy that Amanda spent time with him. She told me he reminded her of her own grandfather from childhood, and I saw nothing wrong with that. She took him to doctor's appointments, had lunch with him, even helped around his house. I thought it was sweet. But then, small things started seeming off. She came home later, brushing it off as just long talks with Grandpa Henry. Her phone was always on silent, and whenever she received a message, her face changed, sometimes a nervous smile, sometimes she quickly stuffed her phone into her pocket. Then came the expensive gifts. New designer bags, jewelry I never bought her, extravagant dresses she used to say we couldn't afford. I started asking questions, but she always had an answer. A friend got it for me, I found it on sale, Henry gave it to me as a birthday gift. That last excuse set off alarm bells. Why was my grandfather giving my wife expensive presents? I didn't want to be paranoid, but something deep inside me screamed that this wasn't right. I decided to find out for myself. I installed extra security cameras in my grandfather's house, under the guise of keeping him safe. And then I waited. And one day I got my proof. A recording of my beloved wife sitting on Henry's lap, his hands stroking her back while they laughed and whispered to each other. My stomach turned as I watched them. I could hear him call her his love. I saw how she kissed his cheek, how she held his hand. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, my hands trembling with fury. But exposing them wasn't enough. I wanted to make them pay. I found out Amanda had a plan. She thought that if she stayed close to Henry long enough, he would leave her everything in his will. She was already fantasizing about her life as a wealthy widow. But I made my move first. I met with Henry and showed him the documents I had prepared. I convinced him to change his will, leaving everything to me. At first, he hesitated, but when I showed him the recordings, proof of Amanda's deception, something in his eyes changed. He realized he had been played. He signed the papers without another word. 2 days later, I set my trap. I invited Amanda and Henry to a family dinner. When we all sat down, I calmly placed the documents and video recordings on the table. Their faces drained of color. So, Amanda, I said, looking straight into her eyes, you thought you'd inherit everything once Henry passed? She couldn't even form words. Henry lowered his head in shame. And I just smiled. Sorry, but you'll both have to find a new place to live. Effective immediately. Henry lost his family's respect. Amanda lost everything she schemed for. She screamed, she begged, but I simply pointed to the door. Now, I sit in my family's estate, sipping whiskey, watching them from my window as they stand on the sidewalk, clutching their bags, realizing they have nothing left. She thought she would become a rich widow. Instead, she's just another broke cheat with nowhere to go. The cold night air must have hit Amanda like a slap to the face because she stumbled back, her eyes wide in disbelief. Henry, on the other hand, simply stood there in stunned silence. Luke, please," Amanda stammered, her voice trembling. "This is a mistake. We can fix this." I let out a low chuckle and leaned against the doorway. "Fix this? Amanda, the only mistake was thinking I wouldn't find out." Her perfectly manicured fingers clutched onto Henry's sleeve like he was her last lifeline. "Henry, you're not going to let this happen, are you? You love me." For the first time, Henry finally spoke. You lied to me? His voice was hoarse, as if he had aged 10 years in a single night. He looked between me and Amanda, realization settling in. All of this was just for my money? Amanda turned to him, her expression desperate. No, baby, I care about you. This is just a misunderstanding. I shook my head, amused. Misunderstanding? Amanda, do you really think Henry doesn't see it now? You used him. You used me. And now you get nothing. She spun back toward me, eyes blazing. You don't get to do this. You don't get to take everything from me. I smirked. Oh, but I do. And I already did. You see, Amanda, all of Henry's assets are now legally mine. The estate, the accounts, the investments, you played the game, but you lost. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Henry for help, but he wouldn't meet her gaze. He knew the truth now, and the shame was too much to bear. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. I already called security. You've got 10 minutes to grab whatever's on you and leave. Otherwise, they'll escort you off the property. Henry finally looked at me, his face lined with regret. Luke! I raised a hand, cutting him off. I don't want to hear it, Henry. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Amanda screamed in frustration, kicking one of the decorative flower pots on the porch. You'll regret this, Luke. I swear to God, you'll regret this. I tilted my head, smirking. Amanda, the only thing I regret is ever marrying you. Now get the hell off my property. As I turned away, I heard her sobs mix with Henry's defeated sigh. I didn't care. They had both made their bed. Now they could lie in it, wherever that ended up being. I closed the door behind me and exhaled, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Let them suffer. I had won. And damn, did it feel good. The silence after I shut the door was almost deafening. I could still hear Amanda's muffled sobs outside, her voice rising in desperate pleas. Henry hadn't said a word since I cut him off, but I knew he was still standing there, trying to process everything. I poured myself a drink, letting the burn of whiskey settle my nerves. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from my best friend, Ryan. Ryan, did you do it? Did you throw them out? Me. They're standing outside right now. She's still screaming. Ryan. Damn. Wish I could see it. That's what she gets for being a gold-digging snake. I smirked, taking another sip. He wasn't wrong. Amanda thought she had me fooled, thought she was playing the long game. But she never realized she was the one being played. I glanced out the window, watching Amanda shake Henry by the shoulders, her perfectly rehearsed tears streaming down her face. I knew exactly what she was doing, trying to manipulate him, make him feel guilty enough to beg me to take her back. But Henry had just lost everything, and the reality of his situation was finally hitting him. Then, something unexpected happened. Henry took a step back. For a second, Amanda's eyes flashed with panic, and I could tell she realized something. Henry was no longer on her side. He didn't comfort her. He didn't pull her into an embrace. He just stood there, shaking his head. I gave you everything, Henry muttered, his voice almost too low for me to hear through the glass. And you used me. Amanda's crocodile tears dried up instantly. Her face twisted in frustration. Henry, stop being dramatic. We can fix this. No. He cut her off, straightening his back. We can't. I raised an eyebrow. Now this was getting interesting. Amanda's confidence cracked, and she started looking around like a trapped animal. She wasn't used to being on the losing side. She had no backup plan, no safety net. She had counted on manipulating her way into my family's fortune, and now she had nothing. Henry rubbed a hand over his face, the weight of his own stupidity settling in. Where are we supposed to go? He muttered, almost to himself. Amanda whipped her head toward him, eyes blazing. Don't talk like that. You're still rich, right? You still have money. Henry laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who finally realized just how much of a fool he had been. Not anymore, he said, his voice bitter. Everything was in that will. Amanda turned pale. No, that's not possible. Oh, it's possible, I called out, stepping onto the porch. Both of them snapped their heads toward me, Amanda's expression flipping from shock to fury in an instant. Where the hell are we supposed to go, Luke? Henry asked, his tone flat. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't angry. He just looked lost. I crossed my arms. Not my problem. Amanda took a step toward me. Luke, please. I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I tilted my head, amused. Fix this? Amanda, you spent months sneaking around with my grandfather, waiting for him to die so you could cash in. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. Her lips parted, but she had no response. Because she knew I was right. No, I said, nodding toward the driveway. Get the hell off my property. Amanda's face twisted with rage. You think this is over? You think I'm just going to walk away? I smirked. No. I think you're going to crawl. Henry sighed heavily, looking down at his feet. Come on, Amanda, he muttered. Let's just go. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to scream at him too, but she must have realized she needed someone on her side. So instead, she turned on her heel and stomped down the driveway, Henry trailing behind her. I watched as they disappeared down the dark street, Amanda cursing under her breath the entire way. When they were finally gone, I let out a deep breath and stepped back inside. One thing was certain. Amanda might not be done playing her games, but she was done playing them with me. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in months. The weight of Amanda's deception, the disgust at Henry's betrayal, it was gone. All that remained was satisfaction. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stepped onto the balcony, glancing down at the street. Amanda and Henry were gone. Good. I had no idea where they had spent the night, and honestly, I didn't care. Just as I was about to go back inside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Luke! Amanda's voice came through, thick with exhaustion and something else, desperation. Please, we need to talk. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Do we? Because last time I checked, I threw you out of my house. Luke, listen. We don't have anywhere to go. Henry's accounts are frozen because of the legal changes. We have nothing. I let out a sharp laugh. That sounds like a you problem, Amanda. Please. Her voice cracked. I made a mistake. I know that now. I let greed get the best of me, but I love you. I rolled my eyes. You love me? That's funny. Because last time I checked, you were crawling all over my grandfather, waiting for him to kick the bucket. She went silent for a moment. Then, quietly, just let me come back. Let's fix this. I leaned against the railing, enjoying how the power had shifted completely. Let me ask you something, Amanda. If Henry had left you everything, would you still be calling me right now? Nothing. Dead silence. That's what I thought. Goodbye, Amanda. I hung up before she could respond. A text came through immediately. Amanda. You'll regret this. I chuckled to myself. No, Amanda. The only one with regrets here is you. 2 days passed without another word from Amanda, and I foolishly thought she had finally accepted her fate. But deep down, I should have known better. A woman like her? She would rather burn everything to the ground before admitting defeat. The first sign of trouble came when I received a call from my lawyer, Richard. The moment I heard his clipped tone, I knew something was wrong. Luke, we have a situation, he said. Amanda is contesting the will. I nearly dropped my coffee. On what grounds? She's claiming you manipulated Henry into cutting her out. That you took advantage of an old man in a fragile state to secure your inheritance. I let out a slow, sharp breath, rubbing my temples. You've got to be kidding me. The only person manipulating Henry was Amanda. I know that, and we can prove it. But Luke, this isn't just a delay tactic, she's gunning for a full trial. If a judge grants her request, the estate could be tied up in court for months, even years. She's hoping to make this so expensive and exhausting that you'll offer her a settlement just to make it go away. I clenched my jaw. That's not happening. Good, Richard said. Because I have a strategy in mind. But first, I need everything you've got. Texts, emails, any evidence that proves she was the one pulling the strings. If we hit her hard enough up front, we can shut this down before it gains traction. The next morning, I met Richard at his office with every piece of damning evidence I had collected. He sifted through it all, screenshots of Amanda's texts to Henry, the footage of their secret meetings, even the voice recordings where she openly discussed her plan to secure her future. Richard let out a low whistle. This is airtight. Any judge who sees this will recognize exactly what she was doing. If she thought she could spin this into a sympathy case, she just screwed herself. I leaned back in my chair. So how fast can we crush this? Richard smirked. I'll send everything to her lawyer today. But Luke, I think we should go a step further. I raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Countersue her for fraud and defamation. She's knowingly making false claims in an attempt to extort money from you. If we push back hard, we can not only shut down her case, we can make her regret ever filing it. I chuckled darkly. Do it. Make sure she feels everything she tried to do to me. Later that afternoon, Richard sent Amanda's lawyer a formal response, complete with the evidence package. Less than 2 hours later, we got a reply. Amanda's legal team wanted to withdraw the case immediately. They knew they had lost. But I wasn't finished. This wasn't just about winning anymore. Amanda wanted to play dirty? Fine. Now she was going to learn what it felt like to be utterly destroyed. Amanda's attempt to contest the will had failed, but I knew she wasn't done yet. A woman like her didn't just walk away, she schemed, she plotted, and she struck when you least expected it. So I expected it. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after her case collapsed, I got an unexpected call from Ryan. Dude, you're not gonna believe this. Amanda is everywhere right now. I frowned. What do you mean? Check social media. She's spinning this whole thing like she's the victim. Ryan sounded almost impressed. She's saying you stole her inheritance, left her homeless, and ruined her life. She's got thousands of people sympathizing with her. Some idiot even started a GoFundMe for her. I opened my phone and sure enough, there she was. A sob story plastered all over every platform she could find. My husband betrayed me. How greed took everything from me was the headline of her latest post. She painted herself as the loving wife who had selflessly cared for my grandfather, only for me to manipulate him into cutting her out of his will. It was a masterclass in deception. I chuckled, shaking my head. She's really trying to milk this, huh? Ryan snorted. You have no idea. She's even hinting that you were abusive. Real subtle, just enough to get people riled up. But Luke, here's the kicker, you might want to sit down for this. What? She's doing interviews. Like actual sit-downs with internet talk shows. One's going live in an hour. I exhaled slowly, feeling a surge of cold anger settle in my chest. Amanda thought she could rewrite history, turn public opinion against me, and somehow claw her way back to relevance. Fine. She wanted a war? I'd give her a war. I pulled up Richard's number, and called him immediately. Richard, change of plans? Amanda's trying to drag my name through the mud. I want this shut down, permanently. Richard didn't even hesitate. Then it's time we stop playing defense and go on the attack. Let's expose her. If Amanda wanted a public war, I was more than happy to give her one. Richard and I spent the next few hours assembling everything we needed. Screenshots of her messages to Henry, the video recordings, even the voice notes where she all but admitted to using him for his money. She thought she could twist the narrative in her favor, but she had underestimated me, again. We won't just respond, we'll obliterate her, Richard said, skimming through the evidence. By the time we're done, she won't have a shred of credibility left. An hour before Amanda's live interview, Richard sent a carefully worded legal notice to the media outlets that were hosting her. In it, we made it clear, if they aired defamatory statements about me, they'd be hit with a lawsuit so fast they wouldn't know what hit them. A few smaller platforms immediately backed out, deleting any mention of Amanda's story. But the main one, a second-rate gossip channel desperate for clicks, refused to budge. That's when I made my move. Amanda had always loved attention, but she had never been good at handling pressure. So, I gave her exactly what she wanted, more attention than she could handle. Minutes before her interview started, Richard leaked the truth to a handful of major news sites. The texts, the recordings, everything. And just for good measure, I posted a simple message on my own page. Lies are temporary. Receipts are forever. I watched live as Amanda's smug expression slowly morphed into horror when the show's host, instead of sympathizing with her, started asking her real questions. Amanda, these messages just surfaced. Can you explain why you told Henry you were counting the days until the will was finalized? She froze. And this recording, where you say once the old man's gone, will be set for life. Do you want to clarify that? Amanda stammered, her carefully crafted persona crumbling in real time. The audience turned on her instantly. The chat flooded with exposed, liar, and gold digger comments. The GoFundMe was shut down within the hour. I leaned back, watching it all unfold with a satisfied smirk. She wanted a war. Now she had lost everything. Amanda's downfall was playing out live in front of thousands, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I watched as she squirmed in her seat, eyes darting around like a trapped animal, scrambling for an excuse. I don't know where those messages came from, she stammered. This is all a setup. The interviewer wasn't buying it. So you're saying the text, the video, the audio recordings, they're all fake? Amanda swallowed hard. Yes. Luke must have faked them. Bad move. Richard had anticipated this exact reaction. Within minutes, a forensic specialist we had on standby publicly verified the evidence, confirming its authenticity. The final nail in the coffin? A former friend of Amanda's, one she had burned in the past, stepped forward, exposing even more of her schemes. It was over. Amanda ripped off her microphone and stormed off the set. The interviewer barely held back a smirk as they cut to commercial. Meanwhile, social media exploded with memes, calling her everything from the gold-digging widow who never was to Scammer of the Year. But I wasn't done yet. Richard had already filed the defamation lawsuit against her earlier that morning, and within hours, her lawyer sent a desperate email trying to negotiate. She wanted to drop everything, disappear quietly, and walk away without further damage. I refused. Amanda had spent months trying to ruin my life, and now she wanted to run the moment she realized she had lost? Not a chance. I told Richard to proceed. The lawsuit would go forward, and I'd make sure she paid, literally and figuratively, for every lie she ever told. She wanted war. Now, she was going to drown in the consequences. Amanda had vanished from the public eye, but her problems were just beginning. With the lawsuit moving forward, Richard kept me updated on every miserable development in her life. Her legal team tried every trick in the book, stalling, counterclaims, even an emotional appeal that she was destitute and couldn't afford to fight in court. Too bad for her, the internet doesn't forget. Every interview, every false accusation, every fabricated sob story was still out there. No judge was going to believe she was an innocent victim. She's drowning in legal fees, Richard told me one afternoon. Her lawyer is demanding payment upfront now, and rumor has it she's struggling to come up with the money. I smirked. Let her struggle. Her GoFundMe had been shut down, her sponsorship deals, what few she had, vanished overnight. No brand wanted to be associated with a proven fraud. The only offers she got were from bottom-tier reality TV producers, hoping to milk her downfall for one last drop of attention. She had gone from social climber to social pariah in a matter of weeks. Then, Richard hit me with the best news yet. Her assets are being liquidated. The court approved a lien on her remaining accounts. If she doesn't settle, we take whatever she has left. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the full weight of satisfaction settle over me. Amanda had tried to steal a future that was never hers. Now, she was losing everything, including her freedom. Because the final blow hadn't even landed yet. "Luke," Richard said, a slow grin forming. "We just got confirmation. The fraud investigation is moving forward. Amanda isn't just losing money. She might be facing jail time." I didn't say anything at first, just exhaled slowly, letting the moment sink in. She wanted to take everything from me. Now, she was about to lose everything for real. Amanda's fall from grace was complete, but I wasn't satisfied yet. There was one last thing I needed to see. It happened 3 weeks later. I was sitting in my lawyer's office when Richard walked in, looking particularly smug. He tossed a thick file onto his desk and leaned back in his chair. "It's done." I raised an eyebrow. "Define done." She settled the lawsuit. She had no choice. With all the evidence against her, dragging this out would have only cost her more money she doesn't have. Every cent left in her name, gone. The court awarded you damages. I exhaled slowly, letting that sink in. "So she's broke." Richard nodded. "Not just broke. Homeless. She was evicted from her apartment last night. No savings, no assets, no one willing to help her. And it gets better." I leaned forward. "I'm listening. Her fraud case? It's worse than she thought. Turns out she pulled similar stunts in the past. Financial manipulation, fake sob stories, even a few cases of suspected identity fraud. Now that she's under investigation, they're digging up everything. There's a very real chance she'll end up behind bars." I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. "Karma's a bitch." Richard smirked. "And so is Amanda. But not for much longer." Later that evening, I went for a walk near the courthouse, half expecting to see her. And there she was, sitting on a bench, her clothes wrinkled, her makeup smudged, her phone in her hands as she desperately scrolled for a way out of the mess she created. For a second, she looked up, and our eyes met. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, maybe beg, maybe curse me, but I just smiled, shook my head, and walked away. Amanda had spent so much time trying to take what wasn't hers. Now, she had nothing. And I had won.